Hi, everybody. Welcome to another live stream episode of Talking Timepieces, where we talk about watch collecting and horology. Um, Thanks a lot for taking the time to tune in. We're always trying to create, this forum for watch discussion here on this channel, and every one of you participating adds another voice to the chorus. And today's conversation was prompted by something that's been going around lately ever since Adrian Barker brought it up. And I wanted to expand on the idea because the what Adrian brought up a few weeks ago and has been resonating all over the industry. In fact, Teddy Baltazar and TGV from the Urban Gentry, both did episodes in the last couple of days on, what is a luxury watch or, what defines a luxury watch. And I thought, let's take a step farther back and why wear a watch at all, right? I mean, I think industries tend to drinking the Paulaner Münchener Hell, by the way, today. I think, unfortunately, a lot of organizations, a lot of industries, a lot of communities do what I call fighting the last war. And I think there are too many people trying to define luxury watches at a time when we should be trying to define watches. That um, saying to, the argument within our community about what defines a luxury watch is damaging in a lot of ways because first it really does emphasize the pretentious aspect of the hobby, quibbling about value because what is luxury but a value assessment, and in watch collecting the value should be in the owner's eyes primarily. You should want I just realized my nose is really shiny in this. I guess I should start using makeup or something. um, the the whole aspect of, let's talk about luxury, right? I brought a couple of pieces here, slightly out of reach when I didn't realize. I mean, it's pretty obvious that a piece like this, Sin Compass, is a tool watch. I mean, it is a very tool watch, right? It's got a built-in compass and all of that, right? So, yeah, you could make the argument that this is a tool watch. It's not a luxury watch, but it's still worth a couple thousand euros. It ain't cheap. Or then you say, for example, yes, the Rolex is obviously a luxury piece, but what about that gold-plated Dugana, right? You know, th- that's a luxury piece to the person who spent the several hundred or thousand. I'm not sure what the original retail. I tried to find this model online and I couldn't. But this is an old mechanical automatic day date. This is a day-night indicator, not a moon phase. But still, it's a nice little automatic piece, obviously intended for luxury use, right? So I think the argument about luxury is kind of dumb. I mean, yes, I participated in the conversation and I put in my 2 cents by saying, there is such a thing as a luxury purchase, and it could be something that's inexpensive, and it could still be a luxury purchase. For what about something what people would call, entry level? I don't like to call it entry level. I like to call it mainstream, or basic, like a Maurice Lacroix icon, right? They pitch it as a luxury purchase. Are we going to say no? It's not a luxury watch because it's not expensive enough for us. That's the height of pretentiousness. What about this Pagani, right? This is an homage to a GMT. Now, someone would say the GMT isn't a luxury watch at all. It's a tool watch. I would say it used to be a tool watch until it got to the point where you could buy a good car for what one costs. It's now a luxury product. Luxury doesn't mean that it's all shiny and covered with diamonds and the like. A Shelby Cobra is not a well polished car in the sense that it's got air conditioning and reclining seats and nice stereo system. It's a piece of muscle on 4 tires, but it's a luxury car. I mean, it's worth several $1,000,000, so it's luxury something. And so I think the argument or the discussion about, is a watch a luxury watch or is a watch not a luxury watch? I think it's self-defeating for the industry. It makes us all sound like a bunch of pretentious dorks running around um, trying to argue how many watchmakers can dance on the head of a Patek Philippe crown. We should be making the argument, why should you collect watches at all? Why should you be involved in this wonderful hobby in the first place? And to have people think that I'm gonna get into this wonderful hobby to bicker about whether an Omega Seamaster is more luxurious than than a Rolex, Submariner, or if, only the best movements are worthy of being worn. I had an argument on Instagram with an arrogant, rude, opinionated, pretentious, snobbish jerk, who dismissed Timex. He said, Timex are not collectible watches, which is the height of, yeah, I think the Brits call them ponces or something like that, who's the idiot in that conversation? Of course, Timex watches are collectible. If not the vintage Timex watches, the new ones that are coming out are really cool pieces. You're telling me the Timex Q is not a collectible piece just because it's only a couple $100? It made waves when it hit the marketplace, and if you are interested in market history, it made a statement, and it has a page in that history book. And to say that a watch like that is not a collectible watch, or at least in the sense that it shouldn't be in your collection. I mean, whether it's collectible for the ages, that's a debate for the people who are collecting for the ages. But if you're collecting and have like a nice set of watches just to wear every day, a Timex is definitely worth collecting. And if you tell people a Timex is not worth collecting, I would rather not be considered to be in your same community. I would like to think that you are one of those weird aberration, watch snob, weird people who I don't want to deal with. I don't like people like you, and I don't want to deal with people like you. If you say XYZ brand is not worth even the most garbage brand, let's say, for example, an old first generation Seagull would be quite collectible if you think about it. But even some of these really cheap Chinese watches, what's collecting? Holding on to it so you can use it, or holding on to it for the future? If I have 3 watches and one of them is a cheap Chinese watch and that's all I can afford, but it's a nice watch, or even if it's not and it's one I like, maybe it's a Smale. I don't know if you know the company. They're very big, blocky, uh, analog hand quartz sports watches that are incredibly cheap. I did a video on one. Bottom line is, if you look at watches as an area of some watches are worth it and some aren't, I don't want you in the watch collecting community. Tell people don't subscribe to that idiot's channel. Alex is a pretentious, call me the pretentious jerk and say he's too pretentious. He thinks we should think all watches are collectible. I want to think that only the ones I like are collectible. Yeah, you can go take a hike. I don't want to talk to you. Let's look at the comments. We're starting to see some comments coming rolling in. So let's look at what the community is saying. Hey, Shy Robert, welcome to the show. A beginner should study watches and prices for at least a year and only buy if they cannot live without the piece. I'm sorry, I'm reading from a little bit of a distance here. For this, I got to change the screen angle again. But yes, beginners should study watches and prices for at least 1 year and only buy if they cannot live without the piece. Well, Shy, I don't know. I wouldn't put like a hard restriction on something like that, because then again, we're falling into the pretentious rules area of collecting. I don't know if we want to go in that direction. I would say save up for your piece, and that'll give you the time to do the research. So the advice: save up for the piece that you want. Make sure you have the cash in hand. That then also gives you the opportunity to change your mind and buy something else. So yeah, definitely agree with you that you should research, but I wouldn't want to make a hard rule. I would make the strong suggestion: save up, and while you're saving, do your research, do your due diligence. Jim Petinato. Hey, how's it going? Thank you. Love the channel. I appreciate it. I hope you subscribe. Tell all your friends. In fact, if any of you who are watching or see this enjoy what we're doing, please subscribe. It does help the channel, and we're growing so fast. I mean, we passed 2,000 just a month ago, and we've already tacked on another 100. We're well on track to, hitting our goals next year, and maybe we'll get to even 10K by next year. But we'll see. It's all up to you. I mean, this is a community effort. It's not about me. It's about you. You're the ones who are subscribing. You're the ones who are giving me your time and your ears and your eyes. It's all about you. I'm just lucky enough that you feel that what I have to say is at least worth some of your time. Thanks. I really do appreciate it. Jim says, like Archie says, it's got to hurt to be luxury. I sort of agree with him. Well, that's one of the things that Teddy Baltazar was talking about and TGV was talking about in their most recent episodes about luxury, exclusivity and cost. Now, cost in and of itself can make it exclusive. If it costs $1 million, there doesn't have to be much of a waiting list for it, right? If it costs $10,000, unfortunately, in the modern, well, I shouldn't say unfortunately. I mean, it's not bad that people have money, but more people have that kind of money to knock around and buy a mainstream luxury piece, and so they go to waiting lists and exclusivity for that. But again, it dodges the core question: why are we buying these watches in the first place? Why is it important? Why do some people like some watches and disdain others? Isn't it the watch or is it about the brand? I think it's about the watch. So we need to have more of a discussion of why are we wearing watches and talk to people who don't wear watches about the cool stuff about watch collecting. And we should do less of this um, organ measuring garbage that just takes away from us all. I mean, this Cartier Santos, right? Is it less of a luxury piece because I have it on a NATO strap? I mean, it's still worth 6,000, right? I mean, okay, let's say you take 1,000 off for the bracelet, but I could sell that bracelet somewhere else. We're still talking about the price of a good used car on your wrist. The fact that I put it on a NATO, does that automatically turn it into a non-luxury watch, and that it falls into a different category entirely? It's supposed to be about the watch, and I think all of these discussions take away from it. So what I want to ask you all is, why do you wear your watches? I wear my watches because I like the aspect of command of time, knowledge of time, and then the technology required to do it, the mechanical, the horological. Lately, the quartz. I've even started to pick up some quartz pieces. If I hadn't opened my eyes and changed my attitude about quartz, I would have missed out on this beautiful Sin Compass, which is a quartz. But horology is about presenting the information and how it's presented and how it's achieved of time. And so, in my mind, it's the question of whether or not to wear a watch. And then once you have that watch, how that watch manifests your tastes, manifests your style, manifests your desires for a better world, that however that could be manifested in watch design. I mean, I got my oldest daughter to wear watches by pointing out that a mechanical watch is actually an analog model of the motion of the spheres. A watch with hands mimics the movement of the sun and the earth. It's a very organic, visceral connection. And when you think about a mechanical watch, wristwatch check, I'm wearing my JLC Polaris, which is just a beautiful piece. Awesome, awesome piece. It's what I consider the highest horology piece in my collection. It's got the 1,000-hour master control movement in it, and but this is a watch first and a luxury watch second. Again, there are people who would say that this is not a luxury watch; that this is an entry level sports luxury piece. because there are some snobs who think that just because it's the non-traditional piece in a company's collection that it should be sneered at if it's not a reverso. But the same craftsmanship went into the thousand-hour master control movement that went into that reverso. So I don't know who's splitting hairs, but you can go online and find lots of people who just find all kinds of ways to split the watch community up into groups. And I'm saying, why? We should all be one community. We should be talking about why we wear watches, why we enjoy having a watch, the beauty of looking at how well an executed face can be, how an executed case, how the escapement, if it's done, um, I have a time grapher I picked up about a year ago, and after I've been wearing a watch for a while, because it has to warm up and settle down. Usually, when I'm about to take it off, I'll stick it on the time grapher just to look at it, and that knowledge of these mechanical devices running so smoothly and efficiently, counterintuitively. These are just chunks of metal banging against each other, and the fact that we make them so precise and so elegant that they can function and tell time to within seconds a day is a phenomenal engineering accomplishment if you think about it, and that's one of the reasons I like to wear watches. So let's see. Pilot Style 1, 2, 3, 4. How's it going? I pre-ordered the Ball triple calendar moon phase. Ball's a nice company. We've talked about them before, and the moon phase is a really nice presentation. I think they go overboard a little with the loom thing, but great watches, and they've got a fantastic history. Goes back to the American Rail. Um, Oh, I almost thought you said ETA movement, but ETA, estimated time of arrival, December, January at a 30% 30% discount, totally worth buying. Balls are nice pieces. They really are nice pieces. Um, Ball just changed the pick to a finalized design. The lugs and dial are slightly different. Fair game? Um, I would say if they what that means is that they're just tweaking it before it went out the door. I wouldn't feel bad about that at all. Like I said, Ball's a good company, and their stuff is top notch. The snobs would say that they're entry level, but like I said, I consider that to be a mainstream piece. And if you consider mainstream to be entry level to luxury, I'd say why not? Because you got to run before you can fly. I mean, you got to walk before you can run. Um, but then again, watch collecting shouldn't be about the value. I mean, that Dugana, this is a pretty watch. This is a really attractive watch. In fact, I asked my friend, this belongs to a friend of mine, and I said, "Hey, you know what? Let me borrow this. I want to do an episode on this. This is a nice little, not quite vintage, but it's a little old mechanical, gold-plated Dugana. It's got day date. I mean, well, it does have day date. It has month, day, and day of the week, and so it's a triple date mechanical. Beautiful piece, but this is the person who well, actually, I know the person who bought this. They wanted a Patek but couldn't afford it. That was literally what they said. I said, "Why'd you get this one?" They goes, "Well, I wanted a Patek but couldn't afford it." So they bought, in their eyes, the prettiest, most complicated watch they could find, and they did a pretty good job, frankly. I think this is quite a nice piece considering that it is a triple date mechanical, with, day night indicator and a display back. Nothing wrong with this watch, but there are a lot of people who would crap all over it because it's gold plated, it's not solid gold, it's a day night indicator, not a moon phase. Um, there will always be snobs who try to split people so that divide and conquer, because if they get you to split your opinion that they've managed to control your opinion, they're trying to control your minds. They're trying to be autocratic within the industry. And I mean, we're all part of the same industry. We're all watch people. We all have the time on our watches. No one has a different time on their watch unless they're in a different place. But two people in the same room, their watches will tell the same time. And beyond that is semantics and taste and money. But why are those two people wearing those watches in that room in the first place? That's the deeper question. And until the industry really starts addressing that question, they're not going to get past the problems they currently have trying to think out how they can retain people. Some people said that in fact, the hands, one of those talking watch hands people who also does face to face videos. I forget his name off the top of my head. I don't want to mangle it. Um, but he feels that something like that Mario Kart uh, Tag Heuer, Tourbillon, or the Chrono, because they have cartoon characters on them. They're trying to go for a younger demographic. Maybe. Did the Silver Snoopy shooting for a lower demographic because Snoopy's on it? There are a lot of adults that like cartoons, and there are a lot of cartoons that have symbolism to adults that extend beyond their childhood years. Um, I've talked about Mickey Mouse watches and adults a long time, and here in Europe, sometimes I get people who say something about Mickey. I've stopped wearing Mickey Mouse watches more because I can't find good Mickey Mouse watches that I can afford. But I used to have a nice Seiko Mickey Mouse chrono. The ears were the subdials, and I would have people say, "Well, Mickey Mouse is a childish thing." I'm like, Mickey Mouse is a symbol of American hegemony. So give me your money. So um, putting cartoon characters on a watch, maybe they were trying to shoot for a lower demographic, a younger demographic, and get people who don't own watches to buy it. But nobody's going to buy a $25,000 tourbillon just because they're cartoon characters on it. That's made for someone who's already in the industry. So the question of how to get people who don't wear watches into the industry is not going to be addressed, and I don't think that was their intent. It's not going to be addressed by watches with cartoon figures on them. It's going to be by convincing people that watches are a worthwhile thing to wear, which is what Nicholas Hayek did when he founded the Swatch. Got all of the big watchmakers to start the Swatch Group, and they created the Swatch, an inexpensive plastic watch that told the time and looked cool to remind people that watches are more than just a way to tell time. They're a way to express style. They're a way to have fun with time. And I think too many people have lost sight of that. Let's see. Pilot style 1, 2, 3, 4. To be clear, I think they are improvements, but I was not consulted about the changes after having pre-ordered, and this is someone bad form. Yeah, okay. Then what you do is you say, hey, um, I'm really offended. Give me a discount code for your next release, or give me send me a free strap, or leverage it if you're really upset. But yeah, they should have notified you. But if they're minor changes, maybe they didn't feel they were critical. But then it also depends on what the changes were. But yeah, I would say maybe you can get something out of them. Maybe they'll send you a free ball T-shirt or something. Make a little bit of squeak a little, and maybe they'll give you some grease. Frank, Timex should be collected in the trash. I disagree with you. Timex, I mean, historically, Timex made inexpensive watches that took a licking and kept on ticking, and a lot of people wore them. A lot of soldiers, engineers, pilots, professionals. Timex ran a great deal of the United States for a long period of time, strapped to people's wrists. My very first watch was a Timex. Um, so a Timex would be collectible by nostalgia alone. But then if you look at the modern Timex company is part of the Citizen Corporation. And modern Timexes are actually well-made pieces. I mean, they're $100 watches, but as I've said many times, it's not about the price of the watch. And if you feel that $100 watches are not collectible, like I said, you're free to unsubscribe from the channel and tell everyone that you know to not subscribe to my channel, because yeah, I mean, there's no need, there's no place to say that one brand is acceptable and one brand is not and should be thrown in the trash. I think that's a very negative and snobbish philosophy. It has no place in a watch discussion, frankly. Jonathan Cavazzini, how's it going? A watch is the only man accessory to express style, personality, about other things. It's a shame to lose that opportunity by not wearing a watch. Well, see, that's another exactly. It's a style statement. I think it's a style statement in the way a piece of jewelry cannot be. I mean, even though something like, for example, this is a signet ring, which means there's a lot of information and it wasn't an inexpensive purchase, but I don't feel the connection to it that I would feel towards a nice watch, because jewelry is much more inert. much more passive, and a watch is more dynamic. So I agree with you. A watch is really one of the best ways that you can express style, because the nice thing about a mechanical device is that there are lots of ways to express telling time. You can get a digital watch. You can get a watch with wandering hands. You can get something retrograde. You could get different colors. You can get one with a 24-hour indicator. There are a lot of ways to present the information, and that's part of the choice of the watch collector. But yeah, to disparage it, I mean, what about the person who could only afford the Timex? What are you telling them, that they're not a human being? They're not people. They can't. They're not a watch collector. They're just wearing a watch. That's not a real watch on their wrist. I mean, you see the absurdity of the ridiculousness that direction that logic takes you. What, those watches aren't real watches? I don't know. It's just absurd to me. Like I said. And I honestly, actually, I don't understand the people who would say that. That's like looking at a Yugo and saying that's not a car. Yeah, of course it's a car. And there are people who actually, collect them because they have weird idiosyncrasies from having been manufactured so cheaply, or the Beetle for that matter, or the Trabant. There are Trabant collecting organizations, and there are people who would say that the Trabant is a piece of junk and it shouldn't be collected. I agree with the former; it is a piece of junk, but part of that's why it should be collected. So, yeah, disparaging a brand just because you don't like it, I think, is the epitome of snobbishness, because you're literally saying that you don't recognize that as a legitimate product just because of your personal tastes. And it's all right to say I don't like it. There's nothing wrong with saying I don't like something. You could even say I don't like it, and I wouldn't spend my money on it, and I don't think you should. Um, but to say something, should be thrown in the trash is an insult to everyone who's wearing that watch, you know? And those are your fellow watch collectors, so you should be much nicer to your community. Let's see. Hey, Yukar, how's it going? Hi, Alex. I hope I haven't been late for the party. Everyone should have a watch to have the nice community. Yeah, exactly. Being a watch collector puts you in a community. It's like when I had my Beetle and I was driving along the highway, I'd wave at everybody else who had a Beetle. You're part of that community. If you're riding a motorcycle, you wave at other motorcyclists. And if you're in a bar and you see somebody wearing a Rolex and you want to get into a conversation, the easiest way to get into a conversation is to compliment their Rolex. You could be an Arab approaching an Israeli and you can compliment their watch and you'll have a decent conversation. Watches have no politics, no race, no religion, no sex. My joke is if you have a lot of watches, really no sex, but I seem to be doing reasonably well. And I don't have a lot of watches. I have like 24. I wonder what the magic number that turns you into a no sex geek. I personally don't think that exists, but there are people who say stuff like that. But as far as the aspect of collecting, watches should be your personal journey and the things that you enjoy wearing. But that doesn't mean that you have to go and slap the spoon out of someone else's mouth because you don't like what they're eating. Let's see. It got hurt. Well, hard truths, my friend. Uh, That's like going to a person and saying, "Oh, straight black hair, I don't consider that hair. You're not an attractive woman because I only like blondes. You, that's hair? Put on a wig. Put on a hat. You're not a woman. That's not the right hair. Where's the line drawn? Where is the line drawn? There are people who would say that this date just is an entry level Rolex and I should sell my entire collection and buy a couple of real watches, right? My collection's worth over $70,000. I have 24 pieces. Um, and yet you could spend that 74 on a watch and still owe and get one watch, you know? So the people who have that Patek Philippe and they look at your Omega and say that's not a watch, right? It's the same logic that some people are applying to those Timexes or to those Suguess or to the Seagulls. Just because you're at a higher altitude than someone else doesn't mean you can disparage the air they're breathing. Let's see. Ucar. To be honest, I was wearing my watches for others, but when I started to enjoy horology, I started to wear it for myself. See, now that is the kind of story I want to hear. You start wearing them because you think, I've got to have the bling for other people, and it's attached to your arm. You have that kind of personal connection with something over time. If you have any softness to your soul, it's gonna penetrate, you're gonna eventually develop an affinity for these things that you're wearing, unless you're just completely cold to them. But you don't strike me like that, you car. So I'm glad that you made that journey from possession to collection, you know? And yes, it's nice that other people like the watches, but you need to like it first, or else you're not really gonna get the full enjoyment out of it, you know? You could wear, let's say, for example, you're wearing that date just. You wear the date just because everybody, you think everybody wants to see it, but in reality, you want something big and clunky and square, and you're afraid your friends will make fun of you. To heck with that. Wear the watch you like, and if they're your friends, they'll accept the watch, and if they're watch collectors, they'll accept the watch, and if they're not your friends, that's an easy way to find out they're not your friends. Oh, let's see, Shy Robert, if you have to buy a watch without any reason to justify it, it means you cannot live with the piece. Oh, without the piece. Oh, yeah, if you have to buy it and you like, "Why do you want it?" I don't know. Yeah, you're right. If you just have that draw. But that's a good way to want it too, right? Haven't you wanted it? Haven't you wanted it? You know what I mean? And then when you have it and you want it, you go in. Oh, Hellraiser HQ, thank you very much for the donation. I appreciate it. Frank V. Okay, I didn't mean to beat up on you, but you did jump right out and say thrown in the trash. Let me read what you have to say. I don't want to get on your case. I'm sorry, but aside from a mechanical time telling machine, horology inside, I like a watch. Also, how it looks, I like jewelry aspect of it. Everyone has the right to like them for different reasons. Well, exactly, Frank. I'm not saying that you can't say I don't like Timex and I don't think you should own one. I think they're not worth the money. You know what I'm saying? Those are all very strong things to say about Timex. Um, but to tar it with such a broad brush and say it should be thrown into the trash, I think, frankly, is a little extreme. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying you're not allowed to not like Timex. Everyone is allowed their own tastes, but those kind of judgmental statements, you're it's almost like you're trying to make decisions for other people. That's the point I'm trying to make. Okay, that's all. But you're allowed to dislike anything. I mean, it's your personal taste. And it's your money. You decide to spend it however you decide to spend it. Um, but yeah, we're a community. We shouldn't be setting up walls and saying some watches are worth it and some are not worth it. And because you have a watch that's not, you know what I'm saying? If the person took the trouble, time, and effort to put it on their wrist, they must like it, or at least they think you like it. And doesn't hurt to say that's an interesting piece. Smile and walk away. Milad, you've been a little late, but we still got a half an hour left in the show, so there's still plenty to chat about. Um, Neil, hey Neil Bailey, how's it going? A new watch for my birthday, G-Shock GM21 SE and a metal G-Shock. See, that's a nice piece. And again, not an expensive piece, and I bet you money it's gonna turn heads and you're gonna have people say, "Cool watch," especially watch people. Because the nice thing about a piece like that, there are inexpensive watches that will turn the heads of watch people, and the G-Shock is one of them. But then again, the G-Shock made their bones. They earned it, they were known as a reliable, rugged tool watch before they realized people thought they were funky, cool, casual sports pieces as well. Let's see. Milad, I'd like to know my opinion about smartwatches, at least as a piece of style. My philosophy on smartwatches is I don't need them. I have a Motorola, an old first generation Motorola 360 in my glass case that I wore when it first came out because as a technology guy and an early adopter, I wanted to have a smartwatch to understand it. But to me, a smartwatch is just a remote terminal for your cell phone. Yeah, you get your alerts and you can talk to it and you can tap on it and all, but I could reach into my pocket and do the same thing. And some people are saying, "Well, I can surreptitiously see messages while I'm in meetings and stuff." I'm like, "And you can't wait the 10 minutes for the meeting to be over? Or if you're waiting for a message that's important, put the phone on the table in front of you, and then you can look at the phone surreptitiously." Um, if you have to wear a smartwatch, or if you want to wear a smartwatch during the day, wear it, but then wear a mechanical watch at night. Go off grid. Enjoy. Show your style at night. make the transition from the smartwatch to the mechanical watch your symbolism that you've taken off the yoke of the corporate masters, and now you're on your time, because your time is measured mechanically and their time is measured with that smartwatch. But no, I don't believe a smartwatch is a necessity. Uh, it's something that you're welcome to wear, but I don't call them watches. I call them smart, intelligent wearables. Um, and you're that's perfectly fine. D.L. Hughley wears a watch. He double wrists. He wears, and also the Secretary of the Air Force. I saw him testify. They, he wore a Rolex on the one hand and an Apple on the other, which I consider a legitimate use, because the smartwatch isn't the primary purpose of the smartwatch is not to tell you the time. It's to be a terminal for your phone. So I wear them both. But I personally am not a smartwatch fan. But I'm not telling you that you should throw them away or never wear them. If you need them for work, wear them. Or if you want to wear them when you track your steps, fine. But then when you go out to party, switch to a cool looking watch, mechanical watch with hands that you can enjoy wearing, and not worry about Apple knowing how often you scratch your butt or drink. Let's see. Neil Bailey, I'm in the Peugeot RCZ car club. Love my car. Yeah, I used to be when I was a Porsche guy. I belonged to the Porsche Club of America here in Germany, and even got a chance to drive on the Weissach test track in down there. Watches and cars are really a beautiful synergistic hobby set, in my humble opinion. I keep saying I'm going to do an episode. I think next live stream we'll talk about watches and cars and other hobbies that are compatible. Like I said, I don't believe jewelry is on the same par as a collecting thing as watches. 'Cause jewelry is valuable, and jewelry can be unique, and jewelry can be collectible, I guess. But I don't consider jewelry collection the same kind of collecting as watch collecting. It takes a different mentality and a different knowledge base and a different passion direction, as it were, unless you're collecting watches specifically for the jewelry aspect. But then that means that there's a gap in what you talk about the watches, unless you are there for the jewelry aspect and then add on, oh, and by the way, it has a movement that took 5 people a year to make. um, I think that's important too. But yeah, um, the important thing is that you're passionate about your hobby. And the nice thing about cars is that cars is also a mechanical, technical style, or it's a combination of art and science. Which you could say that about high-end audio, but digital killed the audiophile. I used to be an audiophile. I was monster cable sales manager here in Germany for the military market back in the '80s. Sold Sherwin Vega and Kenwood and Sumo and a bunch of stuff. I used to spend a lot of time with people tweaking turntables and listening to the results, and all that tweakiness is gone. But the nice thing about watches is that watches still retain a lot of that bootstrap technology. It's analog, it's gears, it can be impacted by how well it's adjusted. It's not a chip that it's either working or it's not working. Maybe the balance wheel is off a little bit, and if it's adjusted, it'll run better. Or maybe the weights aren't properly done if it's a free sprung balance, or maybe the mainspring is starting to fade and it needs a new mainspring. The nice thing about a mechanical watch is that it's iterative, repairable, improvable, and timeless. There'll be people wearing mechanical watches on Mars. Um, because at the end of the day, there is also the primary utility, knowing the time is useful. And even though you don't need a watch, having a watch lets you see the time without reaching into your pocket. And if you have a smartwatch, yeah, you could see the time without reaching into your pocket. But again, like I said, that's a different application space. That's more of a smart terminal for your phone. And that's fine to use it as your timekeeper. But a watch with hands, it could be a quartz watch, but a watch with physical hands ties us back to the old, yeah, music of the spheres, as it were, tracking the motion of the sun and the moon and the stars through the hands of your watch. That's why you can use a watch with hands to find, north because you the hour hand mimics the passage of the sun through the sky. Let's see, your last message got ignored. Uh-oh, I gotta go back then look, Jonathan, where did I miss your message? Gotta scroll back up. Jonathan, where was your message? Oh, okay. Why we buy the watch? Because we like it. It's a statement purchase. We are geek enough to spend what the average people won't understand. It's a lifetime purchase opposite from modern technology. Exactly, Jonathan. Thank you for letting me know I missed that comment. I had to look at that. I did. I definitely am glad that I went back and read that one. Why we buy the watch? We like it. It's a statement purchase. We geek enough to spend the average person won't understand lifetime purchase, which ties to what I was saying about, that whole aspect with the mechanical watch, because that smartwatch in 5 to 10 years is going to be sitting in a drawer collecting dust. And that mechanical watch in 5 to 10 years will be ready for maybe a service. So, just got my first you, Carl. UK Carl. Okay. Hi. Hey, UK Carl. Just got my first G-Shock for work. Really like it. And it's only 100 pounds. Well, exactly. Inexpensive, reliable, rugged, it's a good watch. And that's why it's got such a reputation. You can't go wrong with the G-Shock. I've got a G-Shock embedded in plastic on my windowsill. Check out that episode. It was fun. Do I like Nevada Grenchen? UK Carl, do I like Nevada Grenchen? Yes. And I almost bought a vintage Nevada Grenchen GMT, but 3,500 euros for, and if it had been a little cleaner, I would have taken it. But I'm not a big fan of beat up patina. Color patina is fine, but if like pieces are missing from the lumen stuff, it turns me off. And luckily now there's a new they've brought the name back, Nevada Grenchen. I don't know how much of a tie the new Nevada Grenchen has with the old Nevada Grenchen, but I do see that they're trying hard to keep up with the legacy of the old Nevada Grenchen. The pieces that they have, the new pieces look good. They look interesting. They don't look like they're trying to be, Rolex or Patek or Audemars, or you know what I mean? They don't look like they're trying to be someone else's watch. They really are trying to develop their own design language, which I think is very important with a watch. You should have your own independent design language. I mean, the indices and the font of this watch and the layout of all of the Polaris line, from the Memo Vox to the Chrono, they all, they have they share a design language. I don't know if it's a unique enough design language because the Polaris is still a relatively new line and not too many people can recognize it on sight, but time will tell. But I mean, design language is a critical thing. It really is. How a watch presents itself, how a watch, you know, that's one of the things about the Santos. It's very identifiable. The original Santos was just a plain square watch with a screw down face that Cartier made for Santos Dumont, the aviator. But of course, Cartier is also a luxury house, so they jazzed it up over the years. But at the end of the day, it's a watch meant to be worn, meant to perform under, actually flying an airplane's pretty harsh environment. Back in those days, they flew with an unpressurized cabin. So we're talking about wide pressure string swings. We're talking about vibration. We're talking about thermal swings. And that first generation Santos from back in the old timey days held up, didn't it? Let's see. UCAR, what do I think about modding or customizing luxury watches? I used to think it was dumb, but then I realized the only time I thought it was dumb was when I saw it done to a Rolex because it was reducing the value. And then that made me remind myself that that's not why we collect watches. And so I used to think modding luxury watches was a little bit of gilding the lily, but I can see it as a way someone is expressing an artistic value add, and in one way they're, you know paving the runway, as it were, by using a Rolex, so they can get away with a value add jump right out of the box. The Rolex is raising the value of their mod. The mod is not raising the value of their Rolex. um, I like Seiko mods a lot. I've seen a lot of really cool Seiko mods on Instagram. Rolex mods, I've seen several, mostly engraving or skeletonizing. And, it's interesting that most of the engraving was on Milgausses because those were the cheap ones back in the day, so they bought the cheapest Rolex that they could get their hands on to engrave. The ones that were skeletonized are usually like the higher end ones that I've seen, Daytonas and, the like. But a skeletonized Daytona, odds are they probably kept the original face somewhere and can switch it back. Yeah. But as a whole, I think, modding luxury watches, there's nothing wrong with it, but I think, it's not the best thing you could do with your skills or time or energy. Mod something that would be increased in value by the mod, like a Seiko, or even, a Mito or an Oris or something like that, something Swiss made that could use a bump. Let's see. Malad Sky. Oh, yeah, you're saying. Oh no! Fun fact. Okay, Malad Sky. Fun fact: there are lots of fragrance collectors who do the watches as well, and I guess it comes from the fact they appreciate the more artistic things. Well, that's something, Malad. That's a really interesting observation. I'm glad you brought that up. I'm definitely going to think about that because yeah, scents scents are a very complicated thing. So being a connoisseur of perfumes for personal expression, that means you're thinking about your body chemistry and how certain perfumes react with that body chemistry and the branding. Of course, they're also branding and style, right? The bottle and the style and the image that they're trying to portray. And then of course there's the performance of the scent itself. So that's a very cool observation. I'm going to think about that some more. We can talk about it some more when we have the episode next week. We talk about hobbies that are compatible with watches, but perfume collecting, I never thought of that. It's actually a really interesting way to express collection. And now that you mention it, I know people who, my girlfriend collects perfume. I buy her perfume in duty free when I go through. That's always a good gift. Duty free perfume is relatively inexpensive, and no lady, even ladies who aren't into perfume, they'll appreciate perfume because then that's the one perfume they have now. Because if they're not into it, they didn't buy any, so then they have now an expensive perfume. But you can drop real money on perfume. You can drop several $100s on a bottle of perfume that'll fit in your hand. So yeah, that's a very interesting observation. Thanks for that observation, and keep it in mind when we talk about it a little bit deeper next week. See, Alex Rosa. Hey, Alex. I still love my tube audiophile gear while wearing my Seiko SLA 043. There you go, tubes. Interestingly enough, I'm an electronic engineering journalist, and the article I got the most mail on in the old-timey paper mail days, I did an article on vacuum tubes, and I got over 70 letters, paper letters from engineers about vacuum tubes, and this was back in the noughts, like 2001 or something like that, 2002. And, the I had mentioned how my personal feeling with tubes is I think tubes are critical in the musician's instruments. I think that a tube guitar amplifier is still a viable, valid, important to get. I think a digital amplifier that can mimic a tube is nice, but if you can get your hands on a tube guitar amplifier and a good guitar, you have an instrument, that can make the gods cry. Um, but on the playback side, a tube amp is nice, and it does sound a little warmer, and the big reason it sounds a little warmer is because it's not a, semiconductor device. The waveforms aren't, it's impossible to have square waves. It's impossible to have transients in the music signal, so it smooths out when you're pushing it hard, when you're playing it loud, or you're playing difficult material that's got a lot of information, and you're starting to push the amplifier. A digital amplifier, you'll hear it complain, whereas a tube amplifier, it fails in a gentle analog fashion. That those micro peaks that you can hear in distortion the jagged edges in a digital amplifier, the tube amp smooths it out. Audiophilism is another hobby that's similar to watch collecting. I mean, I knew that, but it's always nice to have it come out like that as I'm starting to wax poetic about tube amplifiers. That are running in Class A. That way you can heat your house with them at the same time. Jonathan, watch design language the non-watch people recognize immediately as Panerai. Those watches can be spotted 30 meters away. Probably Rambo movie has something to do with it. Well, Sylvester Stallone famously was one of the jump starters of Panerai in the marketplace, and exactly, very, very bold design language. Well, that's one of the things about, I mean, this is an homage, but that's one of the things about the GMT Master. Very strong design language. You can see it from across the room, and if it's not an homage, it's probably a GMT Master. That's what Maurice Lacroix is trying really hard to do with this icon. But to me, big bezel sports watches are trying too hard to be an AP. That's why I got the GMT, because at least then the bezel's got the GMT numbers on it, so it doesn't look like it's trying really hard to be an AP bezel. But design language is important, very, very, very important. That's why the Roman numerals, clean face, the white face on the Cartiers. That design language is timeless. So yeah, that's why companies like Panerai are easily. That's why companies like Rolex protect their design language, the things that make the design language. If you say oyster bracelet without mentioning it's a Rolex product, a brand, trademark, you can get in real trouble. Um, they guard their IP jealously, closely, because that's why homages exist, because people get that instant recognition, and people are trying to get that instant recognition by having something that looks like the watch that everybody's looking for. Let's see, Derek Smig, sorry I'm late, that's okay. Well, we still have 10 minutes. If you have a question, time to ask. If not, at least now we have our live stream every Sunday, 8 o'clock GMT time. UCAR, what about downsizing the new watches? It seems new trend goes on small size watches. Well, what's small? When Tissot came out with the 35 millimeter PRX, I considered that small, but as an integrated bracelet watch, you could tell they were shooting for the bracelet look, and the ads they're shooting for all these younger. That's what they figure that's how they're going to sell watches to young people, to new people, by having something cool, hip, and retro, and that might work. Um, the trend towards smaller watches, I personally think, will stop at a certain point, because I shouldn't say stop, because 36 is still a legitimate size for a lot of people. I have 8-inch wrists, so it's not for me. Well, if I'm in a suit, see, that's the other thing. The lines blur. I'd wear a 36 with a suit, because a suit watch is supposed to be elegant. A daily wear, the smallest I would go would be a 38, 39. Some people consider a 38 small, but back in the old timey days, 38 was big. Everything's relative. So the modern smaller watches are large by old time standards. But I think mainstream watch sizes are going to bang around the 38 to 42, s- floating closer to 40. A lot of 39s, a lot of 40s out there. A lot of new releases are 38s, 39s. So yeah, I see what you mean about smaller, but I think that was because there was a big bloat phase when Panerai first hit the scene, and Hublot was trying to do things, and everybody was trying to make the biggest, bluntest watch they could. Um, that's gone back down, and now people want something elegant that fits their wrist. So yeah, 38, 39 is gonna be popular, because a 7-8-inch wrist is gonna handle a 38 millimeter watch, and a 36 millimeter watch, and a 8, 9-inch wrist is gonna handle a 40, 42. 44 is a healthy size. That's a Breitling Navitimer size. I don't think you're gonna see a lot of humongoid watches going forward. You're not gonna see many 46s, 45s going forward, but I would say you're gonna still see a lot of 42s. 42 is gonna, in my humble opinion, 42 is gonna become the mainstream big watch size, and 38 is gonna become the mainstream small watch size. My 2 cents. Let's see. Wonder Tan guy, sorry to be late. That's all right. You're in for you, at least you came in, put your eyeballs on the marker, and you can watch the rest of the episode later. And if you have a question, we still have 5 minutes to answer it. So it's never too late to chat. And frankly, if a question came up at the very last minute, I would take the time to answer it because this show is about the conversation. I've always said it. I do pre-recorded episodes and where I talk about the watches and I hold them in my hands and all that other. But I think this real-time discussion is important. Not enough watch people do it. Some take questions and read the questions in a controlled environment, but I like the aspect of talking to you all in real time. And the more of you who subscribe and participate, the bigger a conversation we can have. Milad Sky, I've been thinking hard about buying the PRX for the past few months and still can't decide which version to buy, Chrono or Powermatic 80. Well, the button fell off of my Chrono. I when it comes back, I was gonna do a follow-up review. I don't ding Tissot completely. This was a watch that was highly in demand. They might have rushed it out the door a little bit on the production line. Um, but the straight up three-hander Powermatic 80, that's a tried and true piece. It's been out for a while. Tissot's had it out for a while. It's gone, they're coming off the assembly line nice and smooth now. I'd go with the Powermatic 80 version personally. I had both, and I thought I would keep the Chrono, but I'm probably going to sell the Chrono as well. But I sold the Powermatic 80, my Powermatic 80 version. But that's because I have so many watches, and I really need to try. I'm trying to keep them at a reasonable amount. I can't see myself the person with 60 watches. I can barely see myself the person with 24. I like having under 20 because then at least I get to wear each watch twice a month. Because I do like to wear all of my pieces. Some pieces I don't wear. So actually, if I have 20 and like maybe three are just to look and sit in the box and look pretty, that still gives me a healthy number to rotate. But um, if I were you, I would get the three-hander, the Powermatic 80. There are some interesting variations coming out, blackface and all of that other. Um, I would wait for the current bump of releases to go and then buy the one you like. But the Powermatic 83-hander, you can't beat it, and the price is fantastic. The Chronos also, you can't beat it, and the price is fantastic. But I would buy the Chrono used because the Chrono new is about 18, 19, and the Chrono used is about 13, 14. So you save yourself a couple $100. But buy from a dealer. That way you get a money back guarantee. It's like if you go to Chrono 24, I would suggest you buy from a dealer because then you get the guarantee, return guarantee on the pieces. But you can't go wrong with either. So, but I would say, yeah, for least hassle and clean look, the Powermatic 80. If you like chronos, I like chronos. Get the chrono. Let's see. Derek says, I have the quartz on the Powermatic 80. Hey, there you go. Um, I'm imagining one is your beater. You wear one in places you wouldn't wear the other. I don't know, or maybe you bought one and then the other. That's an interesting combo. Derek, when you go to sell it, please let me know I'm saving up. Oh, my the PRX. I will. What I'll do is I'll put it on Chrono and I'll let you know it's there, and then I'll give you a discount because I can discount individuals through Chrono. So I'll give you a discount off of the price I have listed for the piece, and I'll let you have it for like 14. Okay. Um, and I paid 18 for it. So and I just sent it off to have the pusher replaced, so it'll have just come back from service. So yeah, I'll let you have it box and papers for 14. When I put it up, I'll ping you with a note. Let's see. Milad, thanks for your time and sharing the knowledge with us. Well, as I was saying, I'm a journalist to begin with, my day job, and interviewing, talking to people, participating in the community, that's the thing I like. And the fact that we can do this, the fact that we can sit here and use the internet, use this tool that so many people are using for stupid stuff to have a fun conversation about watches, I think is fantastic. And like I said, I'm humbled. I'm humbled and I appreciate the fact that you think that I'm someone worth taking the time to spend time with, and I really appreciate that. So we are Skipping messages? Oh, come on, Jonathan. Okay, well, you know what it is? They scroll on me here. Watch size is like shoe size. There's no small or big watch. The watch is supposed to fit you. What I don't like are thick watches. They're uncomfortable, in my humble opinion. Well, 14 millimeters thick are too much already. Well, I think that also has to depend on the mounting and the strap. And like for example, me, I don't like the double thickness of a NATO, so I always cut the keeper strap off of my NATOs and make them Zulus. Um, I think it has to do a lot with the hole placement in the lugs and the pressure of the band on your wrist, you know? Like, that's one of the nice things about the Tudor Black Bays is that they're thick watches, but they sit really nicely on the wrist because of the way the lugs are constructed. So I'm with you halfway, but I think that some thick watches, can wear well if they're well designed. But yeah, I'm blaming the speed of the scroll on missing your message. But I did go back and find it, my friend. I'm always gonna look at what you have to say. Let's see, Wonder Tan guy, why everyone should have a watch? Because time flows and you have to figure its value. Well, yeah, well, that's the other thing, right? Um, Memento morte, I think they called it. You know, be aware of death. Time flies, you know. Cherish the moment. And watches are another way to do that too. So, we have reached the top of the hour. Again, had a great conversation. I love you all. Thanks for taking the time to bring me into your homes for this very short period of time. The fact that you give me your time in this world full of distractions, I really appreciate it. Memento mori. There we go. Take care, guys and gals. Have a great week, okay? See you next week.